Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Almost walked over my tongue a little bit on that one. In case you didn't see, I put out a few videos this week, some of it news, one of it covering what I've been going through these last few weeks as well. So if you haven't seen those videos, be sure to check them out. And honestly, I'm feeling that itch for Final Fantasy XIV. I feel like in my soul, I can feel like 5.3 is not that far away. I'm predicting, hasn't been confirmed, a July 28th release date, and we're going to be getting confirmation of that within the first week of July. So I'm feeling like I want to log in, I want to do some raids and stuff. That's how I'm feeling right now, and I really want it. So I might be doing that a little bit this week, maybe get back on and finishing up a few of those videos that I delayed without really much of a notification to anyone who watches my channel. But we'll see. If I can get to work on some of those videos on live stream, then I'll have a lot more to do on Final Fantasy XIV on the live streams. But with that, I had a lot of questions last week, so let's get into that. Before we do, though, we of course have to thank our patrons over on Patreon, who, quite frankly, with everything that's been going on, it's an amazement to me that any of you are even over there. We even had a new standard patron, Denoho is how I will refer to them. So thank you to them, because I'm not going to lie, my brain's all over the place. I might forget to add you to that scrolling list that's been going while I've been doing this little chat right here. Also, thanks to our patrons of Darkness, Kurenai Oni, and Khuja on Jenova. Don't know why I reversed the names for the first time in God knows how many weeks, but all the same, thank you to them for going above and beyond. Thank you to all of our patrons, and thank you to all of you tuning in and asking questions. So let's get to answering some questions, shall we? All right, first question I saw on scrolling down, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Hey boss, hope you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? Yeah, you doing all right. I've been watching for a while and I love your content and enjoy learning your opinions and stuff on 14. This week I have a dumb question, but I want your take on it. Why don't you think there's a magical melee DPS? Well, specifically a magical melee role. We have magical and physical range, but only physical melees. So to be clear, magical melee would not be its own role. It would have to fall under either caster or melee. Now, caster, and this is very important because this matters for gear, this matters for limit break generation, and you don't want to make it its own role. So when we look at the melee role, which, let's be honest, that's most likely the location this would go, because it's reasonable enough to say that they can make caster gear work for a melee without having to make a whole new set of gear. That's not an unreasonable thing to assume. We would essentially have 5 melee in the game at that point, and thus, it's not that it can't happen, there's really no reason it can't happen, but it's probably not going to be the next thing that we see. They're probably going to keep, if they do make a caster in 6.0, which some people are predicting, it probably will be at range. And I know often we've had this discussion about, red mage technically being your magical melee. I understand that's not an adequate answer because it is not melee most of the time. It's melee for a very small part of its rotation, very important part, but a very small part. So we can't really say that, that is the thing. But yeah, it ultimately comes down to when are they going to add another melee? And I don't think that's going to be anytime soon. But it wouldn't be its own role, but it's perfectly reasonable that a melee DPS that deals primarily magical damage could happen in the future. Another short one, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. Hey. I was watching this video and you started discussing the trust system versus those in 11 and squadrons, and a thought popped into my head. In retrospect, do you think the crossover event with 15 was our first preview of the trust system? No, we had NPCs that were programmed to work a very specific way before that. If anything, it's just an extension of what we saw from other NPCs, from other story events. We've had scripted characters and scripted story events in the past where they just attack whatever and they have very specific attacks and they're scripted to do very specific things. Trusts are scripted to respond very particularly to things like AoEs or damage taken or people's health bars and things like that, but they're probably, it's probably more impressive programming the way trusts are done to make them that reactive, to make them actually feel like the party member. But the majority of the NPCs prior to that, from previous expansions, story instances, whatever you want to refer to, are all programmed in very, very particular ways. And you can't just lift them and put them in another location and have them automatically work. Even if the same NPCs in multiple places, they probably had to program them for each individual location because it wasn't like a general code that they had to use them anywhere. So no, that definitely wasn't the first indication of the trust system. Squadrons are a little closer to being our first indication of that, or almost our beta of them, than any of the NPC encounters ever were. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Howdy haps. Hello. Short time watcher, first time asker. Welcome. Pretty new to 14. This raid tier was my very first. I only jumped in after having already been out for a few months. As someone pugging a lot of content in this Party Finder, sometimes have a hard time figuring out which strats are listed in Party Finder descriptions. I know you tried waiting for optimized strats this tier before making guide videos and ultimately decided it wasn't for you, and you'll be going back to making week 1 guides. Yeah. Thank you for listening to that. But I wonder if you'd be willing to make a sort of update video. So this is something that I've largely discussed because I think I've been going about raid videos wrong for not for very long. I think most recently in the last 2 years or so, I've been going about raid guide videos in a very, very incorrect manner, at least for my own personal taste. The week one guide will always be the first thing people see. And even if you tell people this is a week one guide, better strategies will come out, there's always going to be a group of people that just says, no, I beat the fight that way, so that's fine. I'll only do that way. And they'll never learn anything else. But then you have the next category of people who want to know the updated strat. And unfortunately, the demographic that watches these kind of things dwindles the further you get from week one clear or week one guide video. So I am actually planning on doing small update videos and then hopefully adding, you know how you can do a little eye in the top corner? I guess technically for me, it's right here. Add it there at the respective parts and call it, like, say, have it pop up and say new strategy for this mechanic, and then have it pop up there and maybe give some indication on the week one video that I plan on doing something like that. I feel like I can make a lot more raid content on the channel that way, still make a guide that's week one relevant, and still update things accordingly. I really wish we had the old what was it called system where you could like tag a new video, like anywhere on the video is like a little chat box. Annotations, that's what they were called. We don't anymore, so that's going to be our modernization of it. So yeah, 100% already considering doing that and actually planning on doing that. And also just having discussion videos about the change in strategy and the ideology behind a lot of that stuff, because I've had a lot of requests for more things like that. These are all pretty short questions. I think we'll get through quite a few this week. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Happy, how's it going? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I was very glad to see you get shaved up. Yeah, dude. Even though it's all uneven and shit, but it's too hot. I can't do it. Quick question this week. Why do melee jobs in 14 have different gear? Listen, I agree. I hate it. I hate how many different gear sets there are. Here's the thing. The main reason is because it doesn't make sense for a melee that's like a monk or a ninja to be wearing the same thing as like a dragoon. They're so completely different aesthetically that sometimes that overlap is just weird. But there's still enough of an overlap, even with all the different gear sets, that it quite frankly doesn't make a difference anymore. And so I would love for them to consolidate them. I don't think they will, though. I think they'll try to avoid adding any more because we already have healers, we already have tanks, we already have casters, just that melee. I think they will try to, from now on, never add another set because the whole scouting, maiming, scouting, maiming, striking thing, it's annoying for 4 jobs to have 3 different gear sets. Not to mention you then need the ranged accessories, the aiming accessories for the melee. I agree. Listen, I agree with you, and I hope they don't do it anymore, but it probably won't change from where it is now into the future. I hope, but probably not. This one doesn't have a hashtag, it has an @. So, you know what? It's like me a few years ago. I would definitely have done an @ so hashtag. Mr. Happy Mondays, almost at 300. That's right, we are getting pretty close to that. Hey there, Haps. Hope you're doing well. I'm not doing too bad myself. Good, glad to hear it. Thank you. So for your question this week, in your own opinion, what job have you found to be the easiest to pick up and understand the nuances of its ability pool? Dancer. Dancer over the years has just been the instant go-to. Like I literally needed 5 minutes to piece together the majority of it. There was always some optimizations to move things around, but Dancer was just so intuitive. And I know that some people don't like it, but I like it. That's all that matters to me in this conversation. Over the years, 100% Dancer. Even from back in a Realm Reborn's kind of a hard time to compare because everything was pretty pick up and play back then. The optimizations were not as intense as they are now, or at least we didn't think of them that intently back then. But I mean, you look at like a Realm Reborn Black Mage and things like that, like those were really easy to pick up and play. But right now, definitely going to go with Dancer. Oh my God, this one's got too much energy. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Yo, hi, have a high five. There you go. Tell me what you think. Gotcha. I know you don't like those Oh, okay. Yeah, there was a lot happening there. My brain didn't process you were telling me a joke right here. My real questions. All right. I've seen your video, What I'm Up To, and was pleasantly surprised that you said you've watched competitive League of Legends. Who is your favorite LCS team? I've not actually watched a lot of competitive League, probably since ironically, since COVID started, being such a big problem. I just fell out of it. My brain was just never going to that place. I can tell you that before that, Cloud9 was probably a big one for me. TSM for years, but I fell in love with TSM in the really early days. I mean, Dyrus was the first ever streamer I ever ever watched, period, back on owned.tv. And so I kind of just held like a loyalty to TSM because I essentially followed him as a streamer into his competitive career, and now, you know, back out into, you know, the world of a streamer. And TSM has had so many players I like come in and out over the years, but it's such a hard team to root for. Every year I feel like I'm just setting myself up to be sad for rooting for TSM. So as of the last like probably year and a half, it's been mostly Cloud9 that I've been a big fan of. But I actually enjoy, I don't have a favorite team in the LEC, but I enjoy watching LEC a lot. So that's been the thing. And I'm often asleep whenever it's the other regions playing, so I mostly just catch them at international events, unfortunately for me. Who is your favorite LCS pro player? Like, guys, I'd say of all time, it's still Dyrus. Don't get me wrong, there are other players who I feel like have performed better, held a better head, have a better record over the years. You know, you could look at Doublelift, you could look at you know, the old guard like Xpeke and whatnot. And then you can look at more recent years with people like, you know, Bjergsen, who's actually been around for the majority of LCS, you know, most of it. And any of those long-standing players that have these massive records behind them. But I think still Dyrus, you know, he introduced me into a whole world. So right now I don't really have a favorite player because, again, I'm not following it super closely. But of all time, it's going to be him because of how much he exposed me to like the esports scene, the competitive scene, and just the streaming scene in general. And that's mattered a lot to me over the years. So I'm really glad to have been a part of that. Who's your favorite LCS caster? Now that's tough because I think Captain Flowers has really taken over in the past few years. Incredible natural casting talent. But one person who I feel like kind of gets swept under a little bit for the North American LCS is Dash. You know, he's always running the desk in between the matches. And quite frankly, if he wasn't there, I feel like it would just be utter chaos. And sometimes it even is with him there. But I feel like he gets kind of underappreciated under some of the color casters or play-by-plays and whatnot. And some of the, I guess, more directly knowledgeable people, because he's more of like a moving the show along kind of guy with, you know, enough knowledge to get the conversation going. Him and Shox, actually, both of them in particular, have really, I feel like, come into their own, been given more room to grow, and we've really seen that specific element of the competitive scene kind of almost outgrow the rest of it, because those are the two that I actually look forward to listening to outside of the actual matches more so than anything. They keep me engaged between the matches, and as a viewer, as someone who does entertainment for a living, you know, I live stream and I make videos, that's super important. So I have a lot of respect for Dash and Shox in particular for LCS and LEC, and so they definitely are the top. But for a direct caster, I'm going to go with Captain Flowers. And to enjoy the LCS in the other regions, looking forward to Worlds. I actually hope I can tune in for Worlds this year. I want to go to the next North American one, but let's just say with the way the world is right now, not my top priority. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, first time asking, so I have a bonus Beast Tribe allowance. If only I still needed them, but I'll take it all the same. I've been playing a lot of Destiny 2, and while I don't think you mentioned this game in your videos, I love comparing it to 14, and I'd like your insight. As you must know, it's an MMO FPS with high-quality visuals and regular expansions. One issue that arises is the ever-growing amount of data that it takes on hard drives. They decided to fix it by retiring some destinations and related activities, put them in as, say, a content vault, and eventually put them back in the game at a later expansion. Considering that 14 is nowhere near its end, do you think it could be happening? No, but I can tell you right now that we are essentially getting a content vault in the form of the Unreal Trials. That's more of a taking old content that's always going to be there and bringing it up into the modern day, you know, giving it the adjusted quality of life and making it available and scaled to the current max level content for a patch. And then the next patch, it goes away and is replaced by another one, potentially in the future, 2 Unreal Trials as well. So less of a content vault and more like dealing into, it's like reaching into an old vault that's wide open and then just polishing whatever you find inside of it. So I don't think they'll ever do it like this because the amount of data that 14 takes is actually considerably lower than one might think. It's definitely not to the problem that something that's like super high fidelity like Destiny 2 has to deal with. And so I think it's a good idea for them. I think it's a consideration that, you know, maybe some companies don't actually, you know, consider, for lack of a better word. And I'm actually kind of glad to hear that they're doing that. But for 14, I think with the amount of data it takes, it would be a really long time before we saw this. 11 might have had to have done it back in Secrets of Adulin because that ran into issues with hard drive space for the PlayStation 2. But I don't think it matters that much anymore because Final Fantasy 11 doesn't have a console version, so they can go nuts. Oh boy, this text. You could have added an extra space between some of these, but luckily I can read it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Habs, I have a few questions if you have time or the space in your video to answer them. Let's get to it. How would you feel about every tank getting some form of TBN? Cruise Chaser would be a 100% a joke to solo on my Paladin if I had TBN. Just want to put that out there. I mean, so every job, so TBN fills a role that every job technically has without functioning like the rest of them. Every tank essentially has a cooldown that can be used on them or on somebody else. And that's something that is consistent across all of them. The difference being TBN is directly a shield, and I'd say is much more involvement in the actual kit. It's way more important to use TBN correctly than it is to use, like, say, an intervention. Like, I don't get me wrong, you want to use it at the correct time, but a TBN is punishing if you don't, or if you have any sort of misinterpretation of how you want to actually be using it. So the optimization on it is very, very important. So to say to give everyone a TBN so that everyone has this, you have to use it correct, or like your job just loses a massive portion of its function, you basically end at a deficit, but you still get a little bit of a damage reduction benefit. I like that that's unique to Dark Knight because it stands out as something that people can play that job and really go, dude, I love using Blackest Night. I love using it on myself. I like getting the free proc from it to get my, so, you know, basically essentially making it mana neutral. And that's, I feel like it's nice to have a unique quality on Dark Knight and not make all of their individual, like, help my friend abilities to be like TBN in particular. As for the second question, do you think they'll ever take off MSQ cutscene skip block? Not unless they take away almost all the EXP and rewards from the roulette. That's it. I can tell you this now. If someone wants the skip cutscene and all the rewards, you will never have both, ever. You will essentially need to reduce it down to the same EXP as like any other roulette, maybe like a leveling roulette or something, maybe less. And you need to cut the poetics down to like 100 from whatever they are now. So no, I don't think they will, to be honest. I think they'll keep it the way it is. And having just recently done it myself, having done the main scenario again for a Realm Reborn restart, honestly wasn't that bad. I had to solo queue as a DPS, and honestly, wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. And two of you enjoyed your peaches today. Well, fortunately, there's not been a peaches question this episode, so no, I have not. But let's see. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. What game or game series have you really wanted to like, but just never could? For me, the one that stands out is Dragon Age Inquisition. I love the first two, and every time I start Inquisition, I burn out so fast. Do you have a game you really want to like, but couldn't seem to make yourself? No, I'm pretty set in, like, I either like playing a game or I don't. I guess the closest thing that's going to come to mind here is Witcher 3. Because Witcher 3's world and its story, it's all interesting, but man, does that combat system just kill it for me. I just can't get over it enough. I'd rather have, if I'm going to have something that feels janky, I'd rather just play like Elder Scrolls or something for like a large open world janky combat experience. Another one is Nier Automata. Love the world, love the story, but I don't generally like Platinum games. I find their combat to be kind of weightless and flashy, but like soulless almost. I prefer to have at least a little bit of weight and some style to it. And yes, in case you're wondering, that's why I haven't played the Bayonetta series either, because I feel very similarly about Bayonetta's gameplay. I've played it enough to know it's not as exciting to me as some of like the Devil May Cry games, which definitely lead towards me, or like the Souls games. Something that just doesn't feel so weightless and soulless. So it really sucks that there's games that have like stories that are captivating and characters that I love, music that's off the charts, but I can't enjoy them because the major thing, the gameplay is the thing I don't like. So actually, yeah, I'm gonna go with those two, Nier Automata in particular, because I haven't played the first Nier, and pretty much any Platinum games game, except for Revengeance, which I kind of enjoyed, but it still isn't something I'd like want to play again. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Mr. Happiest. No, just normal happy. I can't say I'm the happiest. That's conceited of me. All right. I recently started tanking with hi to you too, by the way, Gunbreaker, and have used the Alliance Raid Roulette to level and found people just don't care about aggro. I don't know what you mean by that, because tanks have a very easy time, unless you mean tanks fighting for aggro. Because there's no way, if you're a tank, you can't lose aggro nowadays, except to another tank. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. You could also mean people just running all over the place and grabbing like mobs without really caring. But with 3 tanks, that's still more of a tank not picking the mobs up issue and less of a people not caring kind of thing. So 24 mans have higher damaging autos and more punishing damage from mechanics. Things are kind of a breeze, and I miss the unnerfed or bone. Should Alliance raids ask more from the players? They don't like the near raids. Maybe they can be mechanically satisfying if they aren't narratively. No, listen, I've done enough 24 mans over the years to know that doesn't matter what you do. I've seen some really terrible 24 mans in all of my days. Even as of late, I went through the Stormblood 24 mans again during the beginning of the Moogle Tome, and one of those, you couldn't have convinced me I actually even left the launch day. Like, it was that quality of 24 man. The average person who does a 24 man is not someone who's trying to be challenged mechanically. And honestly, even the people who do like to normally do Savage Ultimate half the time go in and just meme it because they can play at half or worse than their usual performance level and probably still outperform a lot of people in the Duty Finder for Alliance raids. So no, I wouldn't. I don't trust other people enough, and when I go healer in 24 mans, I already have to res dozens and dozens and dozens of times and run out of mana and, you know, still have to expect to heal because my co-healer's dead and I hate everything and the summoner's not resing and the red mage has tried, but now we zoom and... No. All right, this one doesn't have a hashtag, but it's definitely a question. Hey, Haps, hope you're doing all right. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. Since you said you don't like Apex Arrow, and I saw a few comments about that in the rest of the comment section, how'd you feel about a fourth song that can only be activated with the max SV gauge that acts as a party-wide buff? E.g. gives parties all 3 buffs that would normally be given a Troubadour. So that doesn't really tackle my main concern with Apex Arrow, in that it's because it's proc-based, it's still... How do I describe this? So all 3 of your songs have their own sets of procs, and you can get more or less procs within a 30-second window, but it's very set in stone that you're trying to earn those procs for that time frame. You know that 30-second time frame, anything you can accomplish with whatever procs you get, you have a plan. And if you get more procs than usual, then it's easy to incorporate that into your plan. With Apex Arrow, you have to use it every time it gets to 100, and thus it just kind of exists in the rest of your gameplay. And that's my main problem with it. There's no real way to play around it except hoping that it gets to 100 during your burst window, because that's the best case scenario for Apex Arrow. So it kind of just goes and just doesn't feel like it's even there for any particular reason other than to just make you track another gauge. And this wouldn't solve that problem. This problem would still suffer in that you're gonna want to use this song as soon as your gauge is full because you need to get it on cooldown and you want to get as many of these songs in a row. It's a cool effect, it's a fine effect, but it doesn't solve my core issue with Apex Arrow. One of the problems is it's not satisfying, but the main problem is that it's still just an RNG layer that is completely detached from the rest of Bard's RNG layers, and it's not possible to reliably play around it. So if this was something that you wanted to make so that when you've gone through all 3 songs, you can now activate the super song, and maybe you adjust the song lengths. Maybe you make it 20 seconds for each of the other songs, and then 20 seconds for this, and now that 80-second cooldown makes perfect sense. It's a 4th song that needs to be rotated between. You can line it up with burst windows, and it makes a whole lot of sense. That is better than what we have now, but not if it's based on the soul gauge. It would have to be based on finishing a full song and then that filling like a separate like a chorus gauge, for example. Like each song like is a part of like you've got the chorus, you've got verse 1, you've got verse 2, and then this is the big finale right here. That would make more sense to me than, again, just tying something different to the soul voice gauge. You know, that actually, there's a lot of questions, but a lot of them are either what do you think, or like things that I don't even know how to answer. Like the very last question I scroll to the bottom is, are we getting Chocobo Knives a job? No. Here's the thing. There's literally no indication of any of the jobs we're going to be getting. People are speculating it to be like chemist, or us to get like a geomancer, or for us to get, what's the other one? Beastmaster, if not as a limited job as anything else. And there's no information. So anything you're hearing is nothing. It literally doesn't matter. It could happen, but there's nothing to indicate anything along those lines is happening. So ignore any information you see out there unless it comes from an official source. That's pretty much the best way to do it. There was another question about 14 encounters being a dance as opposed to being reactionary. And a lot of that is because if you make encounters, to make encounters reactionary, you largely have to make them random, something like Rathalos. And that's not nearly as satisfying as doing with Final Fantasy XIV's combat system. The learning and the execution and taking the knowledge you've taken in and, you know, and using that to overcome the challenge is really the core of Final Fantasy XIV. Reactionary stuff is okay in certain scenarios, but generally you get the reactionary feel from the different targets that are possible for a mechanic. It makes everyone have to react a different way every time they do the fight, even if they know the mechanic is going to be working the exact same way. It's just not conducive to like purely reactionary, like Final Fantasy XI Nidhogg using his wing attack 11 times in a row. There's nothing like that makes sense for here. That's like some AoE damage. It's annoying. You need to heal up after it. You know, aggro's all sorts of screwed now. But it makes sense for that combat system. And the more they script it, the less it actually makes sense in Final Fantasy XI. Whereas in here, the more they script it, the more it makes sense because of the way that the game is built from head to toe. So no, we won't see probably much in the way of reactionary gameplay outside of you being the target for an attack, and you're not always the target for said attack. What else was there? There's definitely more than that I looked at. One said, can you do more videos to introduce new players to crafting? I've considered it, but it's something I'm so uninterested in. And the thing I'm always dreading, I believe that if somebody else makes a video on a topic, you shouldn't stop yourself from making a video on a topic. I do it sometimes, but I don't believe you should. And that's one of my biggest advice for generally content creation anyway. Just as long as it's your take, it's your individuality, it's your personality coming through, then the way you deliver that information or the way you deliver the entertainment, it's on you. It doesn't matter if it's been done before. You got to make it your own. And for gathering and crafting, it's so secondhand knowledge. It's not me learning and then passing what I learn on by playing the game. It's me watching other people teach me and then just passing their information on. And that feels disingenuous when there's so many good people out there that do content on that specific thing. Please play Sekiro. Yeah, I got to get around to that at some point. Another giant write-up on job ideas. I just can't do those questions, guys. There's no discussion really to be had about those kind of things. Well, I was wondering if you could decide a full 8-man party based on the jobs in 14. I would pick whatever's meta, to be honest. I mean, I don't really care about picking meta jobs when it's just like, when I'm just playing the game. But if you were to sit me down and say, what do you want to do? It'd be, give me the 8 best jobs, 2 tanks, 2 healers, 4 DPS that you possibly can. Why would I not pick that? You know, that's the way that I look at it. What's another one here? I didn't even see this one. Dedicated party finder player. Ultimates are kind of impossible. Built a static. We're working on Titan jail chains. One of the tricky parts. If you ever get a major morality down, do you have any encouraging or inspirational words? If you can't handle failure in an ultimate, you're not destined to beat an ultimate. You just need to overcome that. No word should really, words shouldn't get you through it. Improvement in action gets you through it. So if people are giving up because they don't have the mental fortitude to do ultimate, odds are ultimate's not really for them because that's it. All the information's out there. You literally read, learn, execute, and that should be all that needs to be done. You need to get the muscle memory down, and after that, you should be fine. So I don't really have much. People just need to accept the situation they've, put themselves in and work to improve it. There's nothing more that really comes from it. There's nothing else. There's a minor spoiler question here. I guess I won't read the first part of it because the first part goes over what the Eden story has been so far. But the final question ends up being, if you could choose one Final Fantasy staple summon, Guardian Force, Encounter, whatever, exclusive to 14, outside of some of the final and most major bosses, I'm rewording this a little bit, what do you think would make a good encounter? I can tell you that regardless of whether or not I make a good encounter, President on the Train comes to mind. And honestly, in Eden, I was wondering if they were going to do another Bahamut. I kind of don't want them to, but I was wondering if they were going to do that. Final Fantasy VIII has a Bahamut, maybe base it on that a little bit. Give me the Biggs and Wedge from them. Give me more of the robots from Final Fantasy VIII. There's a lot of good robots in there. Okay, is there anything else that I need to hit on really quick? I'm having a tough time getting purple parses and the Party Finder. Have any tips? Dude, Party Finder is... This is my tip for the Party Finder. Please give me good players. That's it. What else can you do? You can't make the players you get better other than clearing it and hoping you get decent re-clears. And you're still going to get pugs that hurt your soul inside. There's no way you can't just make other people around you better. Here's one about a dancer. Is it more advantageous to choose a dance partner for the lowest damage dealers to bring them up or the higher DPS always the highest DPS in the party. As a dancer, some people go, but isn't this better for your procs as a dancer? Your DPS is not superior to somebody else's DPS. You always want the highest DPS player. If two players are equal or near equal, take the person who will give you more procs. But if somebody is clearly ahead, you can't be selfish on dancer. You have to be giving as much DPS as possible, and a few extra procs for you is not going to nearly make up for the 5% DPS your top DPS is going to be getting. So definitely the highest DPS. Is there any other ones here that I really want to hit on before I wrap up the video? Someone referring to a question from last week. No, I answered that one already. I have an Astro in my raid that does like 4k DPS and 65% active time. Oh boy. It's a casual savage static. I mean, yeah, if anything, ask him if he's looking to improve on that stuff, because if he says no, that's already like, that's a big red flag. He just says, no, I don't really want to do any better. Ugh. And then if so, I would probably say something like, just, I don't know, maybe just try solo healing it for a little bit and seeing how he feels DPSing, and then like pull back a little bit every time, I suppose. Like maybe say, okay, like now I'll heal a little bit less and you fill in something. Like that's like the most basic way to teach something, is to start them entirely on the DPS side and then have them pick out certain places where they know they need like a heal or a spell or something like that. Don't successfully solo heal it, because then you'll teach them all the wrong things. You want to fail a little bit, especially in a casual static. And that might be the last one. Yeah, it looks like that's the last question, and a few meme questions. I see someone I see you, Saul. I see the shield cross swords forehead for the just parry back. That's a meme on the Twitch stream where people who want to backseat. Someone was like, turn on emote only mode to stop backseating for Souls games. I'm like, they'll just do something like they'll just do something like for Sekiro. They'll just do like a shield cross swords forehead, which means just block or just parry forehead. So forehead being another emote on Twitch. I keep forgetting you guys aren't all like privy to the Twitch stuff. I'm sorry, that's my fault. Those are all the questions for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you everyone for watching this week. If you have a question, be sure to put it in the comment section of the video below, and I'll do my best to get to it in the next episode. Stay tuned. We're gonna have some more news for 14 probably in the coming week, and there's some other videos that I want to work on as well. So thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you all in the next one, and until then, take care.